Hello, everyone. This is Carrie, and I'm here with my friend Darryl Miller. Oh, there
Hello.
finally just popped up. Okay, so now I know we're actually live.
Okay.
I'm here with Darryl Miller, and he's director of photography, living in Chicago. And so, Darryl, you are the bright spot of my day on this gray day here in Michigan. So, if you can tell me a little bit about where are you today? Oh, I have the dog with me in the studio today. If you can tell me a little bit about where you are, where you're living, and what your situation is like in Chicago, and
Sure.
what were you working on just prior to everything being shut down?
I live in Chicago, and I was working as the full-time B camera operator in second unit DP on Dick Wolf's Chicago P.D. show. And we were scheduled to shoot till April 16th, but then we got shut down March 13th. So essentially a month ahead of when we were supposed to.
Okay, and how long was that? How long was the duration of that job?
It's a 10-month show. We were scheduled to shoot 23 episodes, and I think we shot 20 out of the 23.
You were almost to the end, right?
Yeah.
So where in Chicago are you living, and who's with you as you shelter in place?
We're in a house in a neighborhood called Portage Park, and it's essentially halfway between O'Hare and downtown Chicago. Okay. And I live with my wife, Liz, and our daughter, Ivy, who's 8.
And how's it been as far as like getting what you need in the neighborhood and doing shopping and like settling into a new routine?
Well, we actually are faring pretty well. We kind of prepared early for what we thought was coming. And then we essentially get our groceries delivered, and then we're homeschooling Ivy, and she goes to a private Montessori, and they've done a really good job of providing online education for her. And then we've just also been following different curriculum from like CPS, which is the Chicago Public School System.
Okay.
And so she,
yeah,
and that's been going really well.
And what are you doing yourself? What are you doing yourself? I've noticed like you're posting collages and things like that.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of nice because having this time, because just projects around the house, and then my own little personal projects. Been working out, and then I've also it's been nice because I kind of made a schedule where I spend some portion of the day learning something, whether it's industry related or just other things. So just trying to keep the wheels turning.
Yeah, exactly. So can you explain a little bit about what B camera operator DP, what is that job? I mean, I'm sure it's one of those things that's listed in the credits, but not everybody understands what that is.
Yeah, well, a lot of shows these days have more than one full-time camera. And especially with the Dick Wolf shows that are coming out of Chicago, it was kind of established by Chicago Fire that these shows have a good amount of like handheld and kind of have almost like a reality documentary hybrid narrative feel. And so we have an A and a B camera. And then what I mean by second units is with our shows, it's a 9-day schedule, but that 9th day we actually start a new episode. So we actually have like 2 crews. So when that happens, I take over either starting the new show or finishing off the last episode, and we have an entirely additional crew that kind of works that. And I also DP on the days that my boss, James Zuckel, who's our full-time DP, when he goes to scout for the next episode, then I take over that day on his role. And then occasionally we'll have really big stunt days. So I may go off with my own unit to shoot those stunt days. So I essentially get 2 to 3 days through an episode as the DP. Okay. And then I have additional 2 camera operators who work with me and a lighting crew. And it's a whole mirrored crew from the main crew. Yeah.
So what is, I was going to ask, like, what is the typical day like? But I guess what I want to know more is like, what is your favorite part? Because it all sounds like It sounds exciting, but it also sounds highly stressful to me.
Well,
Like
it's
stunts and all
yeah,
that stuff. Because I know because you only have so much time in order to finish an episode, and so
sure.
it sounds like that you're trying to accomplish a lot in a short period of time.
Yeah, and especially on our show, we're primarily on location, probably 6 to 7 days out of the 9-day schedule, and typically, depending on the script, we might do up to 3 to 4 locations a day, and we try to accomplish everything within 14 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So, but normally we do like 12-hour days.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as I'm concerned, I love both operating and DPing. They both have their different responsibilities and challenges. I mean, as the DP, a lot of people think, well, it has a lot of like it's an artistic role, but really we're also mainly managing time.
Right.
We're given a call sheet at the beginning of the day with what we're supposed to do at the day, and the ADs break down how much time they want to spend on particular scenes, and we have to help them make their day. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of it is time management and working with the directors on how they want to cover these scenes, and I have to help those directors and the ADs figure out the best way to get what they want within the time allotted. And then as an operator, the A camera, it depends on who we're working with director-wise. Sometimes we're given very specific things to do, and a lot of times once we block the scene and we know what the A camera is going to do, either the DP and I will figure out what my camera is going to do, or sometimes we'll kind of know what we can do to give them the additional shots and coverage that they want. So
we just had a comment from Will Eichler. He says, "Great job, Darryl." So he's watching. So if anyone else is watching and you're on Facebook, you can comment live, and then I can say hello to Darryl. Well, you can say hello to us, and I'll let Darryl know, and you can let us know where you're watching from. So right now we have 4 people watching, Darryl.
Great. Well, and also
not like
you
the
mentioned
million
Will.
people that watch Chicago PD, but more people will watch later, and this is very valuable. Very valuable. Go.
Well, and it's great. It's great that Will came in, because actually it was on Chicago Fire that I got some of my first days as a camera operator, and that's how I met Will, and that was thanks to Lisa Wiegand, who was the.
So that's recently. You guys didn't know each other.
Yeah, well, I think I've probably known Will now for like 5 years.
Okay.
And one of the first times I went out to operate was on a second unit where Will was the A camera operator for that unit, and I worked alongside Will several times, and he's great. And I just think it's also amazing that someone else from Michigan is working here in Chicago. He kind of commutes. His family's still in Michigan,
right.
And he's now the A camera operator on and Steadicam operator on Chicago Fire, and he's just great to work with. So.
Well, Will worked with me. Like we were at Michigan State at the same time, and so I met him many years ago.
So did you also know Dave Lukasik?
Well, Dave is in the film industry because of me, because he worked on my movie. And
because he's our gaffer.
I know.
Chicago
He's
PD,
great.
another Michigan guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of you. There's a lot of you over there. So can you talk a little bit about, so you came from Michigan, and what was your path? Because you just didn't apply for this job and get the job. So I know that, Darryl and I went to high school together, for those of you that are watching, and we are products of Russ Gibb's program in Dearborn High. We were one of the first high school video programs in the country. So he was really a visionary. And so I don't know if you want to talk about that. Well, we'll look at the photos, but when did you first figure it out that this is what you wanted to do? And then over the course of the next several decades, 3 decades, how did you get the job that you have now?
Well, back in high school, before I got into Russ's program, I was exposed to back porch video, and seeing those kids running the studio by themselves and kind of doing their own thing just seemed like an amazing thing to do. And then when I got into Russ's program, it was just one of those things where, you know, that of course was my favorite class to go to. I mean, it's what got me up in the morning. And I think the consistent thread in my life is that I enjoy being a part of storytelling in some way, shape, or form. And when I went to college, or to finish college at Columbia College, my thought was to maybe become like more of an editor, because in high school and then in community college, I was doing a lot of like putting things together, shooting things, and then editing them, and I kind of enjoyed that part of storytelling. But I took a lighting class, and I just really enjoyed being a part of a crew. And I also enjoyed the idea of learning how lighting could be a storytelling element. Mm-hmm. And that led me to cinematography. And then after I graduated, I was lucky enough that while I was going to school, I had met some people who were already working like on non-union music videos and commercials in Chicago. So I started working with those people. And then after I graduated, I was working a lot with those people while still shooting other people's projects. And then in '97, the studio mechanics local in Chicago opened up the books to all the commercial people, and I became union, which then allowed me to work on movies. So I started getting in with different
so that was pretty early.
Electric crews.
That was pretty early in your career, yeah.
Yeah, working that, and then I just spent a good 10, 15 years working in lighting, and then slowly got back toward camera, shooting commercials, reality, corporate type stuff. Mm-hmm. And then when Chicago became busy with these TV shows, I became a member of Local 600 as a camera operator, and just slowly, networked and bided my time. And eventually I got an opportunity to start operating on the TV shows. So, and that's kind of it's kind of the abbreviated form of how I got where I was, or where I am. So
what is the sense today as far as going back into production? I mean, when you guys shut down, how were people feeling about what was going to happen next? And what are you thinking about as far as protocol, going forward?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, at the moment, Local 600 has been really great about updating its membership on, as far as their talks with production in the studios. And I think in general, they're just trying to hammer out these details of safety and liability with both the crew and the talent. Mm-hmm. I know that some articles have been published in, like, I don't know if it's like in the Hollywood Reporter or other places, where some people are trying to get things back going in September. Other things that I've heard from production managers who have connections in Los Angeles say that certain networks aren't really planning on doing anything until the new year. Because, mm-hmm. And I think part of it is just everybody's uncertain how to make people feel, I guess, because I think, to me, there's still going to be an element of risk going to work.
Sure.
So I guess it's what the membership feels is a legitimate, reasonable risk to go back to work. Mm-hmm. And I think certain industries will start up sooner. I think sports will probably will be probably one of the first things to start up. It's just people won't be in the stadium.
Yeah.
I think other like game shows, things like that, things where they can be in studios and they don't necessarily have to have live audiences.
Mm-hmm. My brother does something with sports gaming in Las Vegas. And so he said, I guess in Korea or somewhere, they're playing baseball, and they're taking bets, and people are betting on sports. They're
sure.
find something to bet on. So they've kind of already started doing that, and they're playing to empty stadiums, I guess. But you're right. I think that sports will probably be first. So what is their typical, what is the shooting season like? I think people are interested to know, like, when is When are you
Right.
working if you're on under contract, because you get hired in, but it's still pretty much a freelance contract position, right? So
Yes.
how does that work exactly?
Well, the Dick Wolf shows are they're part of kind of an old paradigm. There's very few shows that go like
I feel
10.
like I need
They're
an
like 10.
audio effect. Sorry.
Oh, sure. They're like very few shows these days go like 10 months, especially since the rise of like streaming content. Things like on Netflix and Hulu and Amazon, those are usually maybe 8, 12 episodes. And, you know, we generally are like 20 to 23 episodes a season. So we go approximately 10 months. We start just after July 4th, and then we end mid-April. So that's a great chunk of time to be working.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially,
You made it. You did it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so I guess as far as like how we're hired for the season.
Okay.
And then after the season, we're essentially laid off. And unless we're told not to come back, we come back next season.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how it works.
And how many seasons are you in now?
Well, I've only been on Chicago PD 2 seasons now, and this was season 7. And and then at the beginning of the new year, we found out we were renewed for 3 more years. All the Chicago.
I'm sorry,
3 more years.
3 more years.
Renewed,
Those
which was
both shows let live forever, don't they?
Yeah,
and
like,
that's like yes.
And that was all 3 shows: Chicago Fire, Chicago Med, and Chicago PD. So all 3 shows were renewed. So
okay. So tell me, the other day when we were doing our prep call, you were telling me that you think you have the best show in Chicago. So why?
Well, it's the best show as far as like me personally, just because a lot of the crew members are people who I've worked with for. I mean, some people I work with, like Jason Storin, our key group. It's like he's one of the first people I ever met working on a paid gig. You know what I mean? So there's certain people who I've started out with in the business who now, now we're becoming like the new old guys, which is awesome.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's
like,
yeah,
it's like, oh wow, we were able to survive this long and make a living. Right. And I just think I'm lucky to be with just a really great group of people. Everyone in all departments get along really well and support one another. And I think that's also a testament to Chicago, because, in Los Angeles, there's different unions for different trades, whereas in Chicago, with the studio mechanics, that includes grips, electricians, carpenters, painters, script supervisors, sound people. And so all those people, they're like a big family. So, and I also just enjoy the show. And I know that like when Will was the original B camera operator, Steadicam op for Chicago PD, and he came over from Chicago Fire. And so he's worked both shows. And I'm sure he would say the same thing, because both shows are very exciting to shoot. Both the casts of Chicago Fire and Chicago PD are great people, and the crews are really great. So, so I just feel like I'm lucky. Like other shows that have come to town, who I've day played on when I wasn't working on Chicago PD, they may be more challenging visually, but it's just not the same vibe.
Let me ask you, I'm sorry, I'll ask you a personal question. Well, I guess they're all personal questions, but did you meet your wife on set? Was she in the business?
I did, actually, because there was a period of time in like the late 90s where I was actually thinking about moving, because I had worked on a project with a DP named Jess Shelton, who was out of Austin, who's now in Los Angeles, and he has an amazing career going right now. And he basically was trying to convince me to move to Austin, and then eventually moved to LA with him. And I was planning on doing that. And then I was actually in Austin, kind of vacationing and visiting with him and some other people. And then at the time I was working for this key grip named Art Bartels, And he called me up and he's like, "Hey man, so I got us a movie." And I was like, "Okay." He's like, "So what are you doing?" He's like, "Well, I'll drive back and work on the movie." And that ended up being a movie called High Fidelity. And I met my wife on that movie, and I didn't move. I stayed in Chicago.
What position was she doing? What was she working?
She was a camera assistant.
Oh, so she's a camera too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, that's how I met my wife, was on High Fidelity.
Yes. So you're a very technical household.
Yeah. Like everything in our house is P-touched. I know exactly where the garbage disposal is because it's all labeled for me, because my wife is much smarter than I am. So
Yes. You camera people have a distinct personality that I appreciate very much.
Yes, our house is very well organized. Not because of me,
sure. I am
but because of my wife. So.
Yes. Yeah. So I do want to share with our viewers. I'm going to share my screen so that we can take a look at some of the photos that I pulled together. There you are.
Yeah, that was back in
90. So this is actually, I don't think, can I make it full screen? Oh, there we go. So the Ambassador Motel, this is actually a page from my photo diary that I kept at that time. So this was kind of it was a significant project for me. So it brought together a lot of us from different years that were all a part of Russ's program. So here we are. There you are, right here up at the top, Darryl. And yeah, I love this vehicle. I'm not really sure what it was, but I remember this was the first time I saw a dolly track laid, and I thought that was super, super cool.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
And there you are again with your flag.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a flag. It's a whatever that's.
It's like a reflector board or something.
Yes, reflector board. Yeah. So I have to say I don't know if you remember, but I wanted you to be my first. You were not my first interview, and I wanted you to be my first interview because you keep liking all my posts on LinkedIn, and I would have like these fake conversations with you, like when I was out walking my dog, thinking about, oh, it's so nice for Darryl to like I wonder how he's doing, I was remembering there, and maybe you will remember or you won't, but do you remember that Filmcraft was on Jefferson in Detroit when we were making the movie, and that you and so we were shooting like ridiculous, like the kind of days that, I don't know, like we were shooting 16, 18 hours a day on this student film. And then you and I was tasked with taking the film to the lab. And I think you went with me one night, and it was wherever we were shooting. I don't know where we were shooting, but we had to drive to this place at 4:00 in the morning to drop the film off. And then we went back to Dearborn, which was like another half an hour, and you slept on the couch in the basement. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I would remember it because a loft that I had in Detroit for many years was like a mile from that lab, where the lab used to be. And so every time I would drive by it, I would remember like how crazy it was to drive in the middle of the night from wherever we were to drop that film canister off, because we had to do that in order for them to process it and get dailies. So.
No, that actually was an amazing experience, because so Bob Kernan had this short film, and he went to Russ, and Bob was able to pull professionals like Lon Stratton, and his Grip Electric crew and all these other people. But then that crew was so nice to let us students also come in and help, and I learned so much. And what was kind of amazing about that project, as well as what I think was amazing about being part of Russ's program, is that it showed you that you didn't have to be stuck with one thing. You could try out different things and apply your skills to different parts of telling a story. So like, I just remember that when I went on, I ended up becoming a member of the Grip Electric crew. And then after that, it was really nice that Bob and then Carla, who Bob had entrusted to edit it, allowed me to sit in and be her assistant.
See, I didn't remember that.
And that was amazing that she allowed me to work with her, because I think she was, I don't know if she was an NYU or Tisch grad at the time, but I know she was living in New York.
She went to Tisch, I believe.
Yeah.
And
And so I got to
visual arts. Is that the same thing? Yeah, she was in New York.
Yeah, and so it was amazing that I got to do that. So not only did I get to work on the shooting of the film, but then I also got to work on the post-production. And then Bob Kernan, the director, he let me go when they were timing the dailies and they were doing the final coloring for the film. So we had edited it, and then we went down, and and Dave Eisner. We should talk about Dave at some point. And then I got to see how a film got colored. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was amazing. And so it opened up, because of Russ. I think what Russ Gibb, to me, and it's sad that he passed. I think what Russ's greatest lessons to his students wasn't necessarily, the equipment he provided, but the idea of how, to take risks, and the importance of not just taking advantage of opportunities, but creating opportunities. And even though my career hasn't necessarily been a straight line, there are things living in Chicago, opportunities that I took advantage of. Like back in like the early 2000s, I got a call from a DP who I'd worked with, who was a Chicago DP, and he was like, "Hey, Darryl, some friends of mine want to do this TV pilot because it's pilot season and they have some connections. Will you produce it?" And I was like, sure. I've never produced anything. He's like, "It doesn't matter. You can do it." I was like, okay. And they didn't have money to pay anybody, but I ended up getting the crew, the locations, the SAG contracts. I did the whole thing by myself. And it was an amazing experience. And the TV pilot was for an actor named David Pasquesi, who's a rather well-known improviser. And now he was like on Veep and some other shows. And then the other person who was involved with this project was Tracy Letts, who's a Steppenwolf. He's a member of Steppenwolf, and he's an actor and a playwright and screenwriter. And so I got to work with those two guys on a project that they wanted to do, and I made it happen for them. And it allowed me to learn about all these other departments and how, all their struggles, which created an empathy toward those departments. So when I deal with them with complete empathy and respect. And instead of complaining about something or demanding something, I work with them in the best way I can to maybe help solve a problem. Mm-hmm. And I think that came from when we were in high school, where it was just like, you just had to do everything and you had to work together.
Yeah.
And I also think Russ's entrepreneurial spirit, and I think he wanted to put that entrepreneurial spirit in all of us, no matter what we went to. And I know that a lot of people who I still stay in touch with, who are part of Russ's program, who may not be in the industry, but are doing just phenomenal work in whatever they've devoted their life to. And I think it was because of him. And the relationships of meeting people like you as well.
Yeah, and he gave a place to kids that didn't have a place.
Right, exactly.
So I think that was, just the environment that he created, I think was so, in such an odd way, very nurturing. So.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
No, we were, and I think also too, because you went into class and it was all these people. Some people were jocks, and some people were nerds, and some people were like the goth kids, and some people were like, the punks and the metalheads and whatever. But we all had that desire to be involved in video and be storytellers. Mm-hmm. And so we all learned to get along and see past all those exterior things and we kind of went on a journey to figure out who we were. You know what I mean?
Right.
And when I think about working like on a film set, what I love about it is that there's all kinds of amazing people and characters who have come from a variety of different backgrounds. And every day we come to work and we work together and we have fun. And so it's pretty great. Oh, and as Dave said, skateboarders too.
Right. Good job. Good job calling people out there, Darryl. If anyone else is watching, I know Molly is watching from Germany, or she was watching earlier. So hi, Molly. I'd love to go visit her. And her updates from Germany are really interesting too. The way that they've handled, the crisis has been kind of managed a bit differently over there. So can you tell me, like, what advice would you have for people that are aspiring to a career in the camera department, or they want to work on a television show? And so maybe, I think we came up from a different way because we didn't know anybody. We just wanted to be in video or film. So it was kind of a different path. But what advice would you have for someone wanting?
Sure. I mean, definitely my path was, it was a rather longer path to get where I wanted to be. But I would say if people who are interested in getting in camera department, it all depends on, what they've, I guess going to college and studying cinematography, you can kind of find what feels best. Like, for instance, like my wife, she never wanted to be a DP. She really enjoyed just being a camera assistant. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Which is an amazing, tough job. I mean, focus pulling is an amazing skill. And me personally, I'm very fortunate that my focus puller, a guy by the name of Don Carlson, who's literally a legend in the business. I mean, he's worked on, when he was like in his 20s, he worked on like Cannonball Run and was like the focus puller on Cannonball Run.
And he's still pulling focus?
And he's still pulling focus. Wow. And he's a very particular man, and he's very set in his ways, but it's amazing what that guy can do. And so those are those people. Mm-hmm. And then some people want to be DPs. And I know that younger people who have reached out to me and asked me like for advice, I always ask them like, well, what do you want? And they say, well, I want to shoot movies. And I'm like, okay, well, and some of these people are in college and some of these people are not. And I always say, well, pick a school to go to college that you feel like has a good cinematography program. But I say that a lot of people that I have worked with who are DPs, most of them have taken a particular path. And like, I guess if you take somebody like Lisa Wiegand, who I think she's been ASC for more than a year or so. She might have been ASC like 2 years now. But she grew up outside of Detroit.
In Royal Oak, right?
I think so. And then she went to Wayne State. And then I think it was after Wayne State, and Will can maybe correct me if I get this wrong, but then she went to the American Film Institute. And I think through that process, that allowed her to network and meet people and also get that kind of postgraduate training.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people who I have worked for have taken that path where it didn't necessarily matter where they got their bachelor's degree, but that they definitely went to AFI. Now there's other people like my friend Jas Shelton, who I think he did the current season of Homecoming, but he's done a lot of really amazing films and TV series. He kind of was the same route as myself. He did Grip Electric, but then he did move to LA and really pursued doing camera, and was able to hook up with some really great young directors who ended up getting their films in Sundance. And so that process ended up kind of accelerating their career. Mm-hmm. But I think in general, for young people who really want to shoot TV and movies, I think for the most part, they need to go to, once again, kind of go to LA or New York, because those are where you meet those directors and those producers who create things and kind of accelerate your career. So now, if you're just looking to be kind of in the industry and working in the camera department, well, I think just anywhere that there's a large market, whether that be New York, LA, Atlanta, Chicago now, I think you'll be able to break in rather quickly and get work if that's your goal. Do you know what I mean? And then from there, who knows? I mean, like I said, I was fortunate that I was able to get on the TV shows because I was in the union and I knew people, and also people knew that because of my years working on movies and TV, I understood what it was to work on a set and understood set etiquette, and also too, I've just always been the kind of person where I do more listening than talking, and I do more watching. Like, oh, okay. Like when I wasn't shooting stuff, I would go sit by the monitors with the DP, and I would see how the operators were framing things, and how the DP wanted things framed or wanted things done, and each DP is different, and so I would pay attention to that. So when it became my turn to do something, I would try to do it their way. Right. You know what I mean? So, so I don't know if that helps anyone, but I think it does help to, if you're the person who's like, this is what I want and this is what I want to do, then I think following those paths of getting yourself in a place that provides the greatest amount of opportunity. And so if you want to be a DP, the greatest amount of opportunity to meet directors and meet producers and people who can get you work is in LA and New York, because that's where things still get produced. And then they eventually go to places like Atlanta or Chicago or New Mexico or Louisiana to be done based on either location or tax incentive.
Yeah. I know we lost a lot. We had when the tax incentive was here in Michigan, we were really jumping for a while. And a lot of those guys, I mean, especially crew, as soon as that incentive collapsed, they went with it. And so there are very few like union camera people, union department people here anymore. So, I mean, there's still work getting done, but most of it, the big movies are coming from out of town. So, and
I think for people who want to be operators, I think it's, I think that, like, it's great that Will is kind of here to listen to this, as well as Dave Eisern, because they're both operators who are also Steadicam operators. And I think as far as like TV shows go, for the most part, at least one of the operators on a 2-camera show is the Steadicam operator. And I think for people who maybe get out of school and are like, I really just want to operate, because it really is its own thing.
Yeah.
And you are, unlike sometimes the DP a lot of times, they're not operating a camera, especially on TV shows. So they're dealing with the lighting, and they are talking to the director and talking to the operators about the shots. But the camera operator is right in the thick of it. They're the ones who 1 minute are putting the camera on their shoulder and they're doing something handheld, or they're hopping on the dolly with 30 feet of track, doing a dolly shot, or they're jumping on the techno crane to do a crane shot. So, it gets to be, there's a lot of variety and a lot of excitement, and you're right there in the action, either it be a stunt or just being right there with the talent.
So can you tell me a favorite setup that you like in particular? Is there a certain thing that you really like to do that you get the chance to do on this show? It comes to mind. I know I look at your Instagram and it's so funny. People have asked me, like, Carrie, when you're like, in order to promote yourself, can you stop and take selfies with yourself and your client? I was like, no, I can't do that.
Right.
Like there's no time for there's no time for selfies when you're on set.
Sure.
But so tell me, like, what are some of the things that you get to do that you really like?
Well, I guess that's why I like being on Chicago PD, is because, and especially in the past 2 seasons, we've been doing a little less handheld and a little bit more stuff with dollies and cranes and things like that. So that's what's kind of fun, is that, like I said, at any moment you might be doing a scene and it's like, well, we're handheld on this scene. or it might be a hybrid where we might establish a scene doing, dolly shots, and then we get handheld, and then all of a sudden it's like this season, we had an opportunity where the A operator was doing a Steadicam shot, but then they put me on the crane because the shot kind of continued. He followed this group of people up to a certain point, and then I would take on the rest of the scene in the crane. And so I was on the crane for the day, doing that kind of stuff. I think last year my favorite moment was I was day playing on a show which I believe is now called Soundtrack. I think it might be on Showtime.
Okay.
But I went in as an additional operator because they had second units almost every day to help finish the show. And that show was interesting because part of it was like a musical. So like within a scene, the characters would break into song, and there'd be like dance routines and this whole thing. And a lot of that was done on the crane. So I would be on like the techno crane all day, or sometimes we'd have a remote head on the dolly. So you would still have to operate the camera using the wheels. But I just know that like every day that I went in, for the 14 days that I went in, I'd show up and they'd be like, so we're going to do this. And they want to do this shot. And I'd be like, and myself and like either the crane operator and the dolly grip and the camera assistant and I, we'd be like, well, how are we going to do that? You know what I mean? And it was fun to figure it out and get it done. But I felt like every day I went there, it'd be like, I have no idea what they're going to throw me. And they always threw me stuff I had never done before. So part of me was really excited. And the other part of me just like, didn't want to screw up. And luckily I didn't screw up. So they kept asking me back. But I think that's like the fun job about being an operator is sometimes you're thrown these things that you're like, maybe someone else has done it. But me personally, I'm like, wow, I've never done that. And the great part about it is, I always try to be like, unless it puts someone in danger, I always try to be like, oh, okay, yeah. Even though inside I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. But then we end up doing it, and it's fun.
To ask you, I also have to ask you, because what I've been doing is trying to teach people to be camera ready, because everybody's making videos and everybody's getting a camera these days. So do you have a key piece of advice? Like, or how do you know you're showing up camera ready in your department? Like, what is it? Or because I feel like when I'm on set, every person there, I don't care who they are, everybody has a different point of view as far as what they're looking at and what's happening. So what kind of advice can you give people as far as when they're showing up on set, what should they be doing?
Well, me personally, especially like, working on a show that is 10 months, there is the trap of sometimes getting lulled into being like, well, it's just another day, right? And every day I try to go in there, and when I get my sides, and they start rehearsing, I just keep myself open and try to be like, well, today's a new day, and let's not, I mean, obviously there are certain shots we always kind of do, but every day I try to go in and I try to be like, well, how can today be better? Or how can I be better? Do you know what I mean? And I think that's just the thing. And I also think too that like in general, like when I get to be DP, I always like go to the director and the first thing I say is like, yeah, good morning. Hey, let's have some fun today. And a lot of times, even though like, we don't have a lot of time to do something, I try to be open with the operators I'm working with and with the director, and I try to keep myself open because maybe I'll see something. I'll be like, yeah, we can do that shot. And then I'll be like, and maybe B camera can go and lay a bunch of track here. Maybe they can do this, and they're like, oh, well, that's cool. And I guess it's always like trying to find things that are appropriate for the show, that tell the story, but also, stay kind of like energized and excited about being at work. And especially like in Chicago, where on the Dick Wolf shows, especially Chicago Fire and Chicago PD, we are outside like 85% of the time, no matter what the weather is.
Yeah.
So it could be like below freezing and you can barely see anybody you're working with because you're all just like wardrobed up.
Right.
And and you just got to go in on the day and be like, you know, there's a reason why I'm here, because I thought this was fun, and today might not seem like it's going to be a lot of fun, but let's make it fun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's helped me personally, especially, you know, in times where it's like, hey, you know, the AD's coming to me and like, hey man, we're like an hour and a half behind, even though that why we're behind has nothing to do with me. And they're like, hey man, we're screwed, man. What are we going to do? And I'm just like, all right, well, we'll figure it out. Maybe when we go here, we'll do this. You know what I mean? And I, you know, and maybe inside I might be really stressed out, but on the exterior, I try to remain
always
calm.
had a great attitude, and I'm sure that's, you know, has contributed to your success. So I know that you put in the hours and you have the skill and the intelligence, but having a great attitude is also one of the things that always gets you called back.
Yeah. Sure. And I would also say for people who want to get into operating or DPing, early on, I'd say 10 years ago, you know, I kind of decided for myself, I got myself a notebook, just a small black notebook. And the days that I wasn't working, I went online and I relearned things that maybe I had forgotten, or I studied other cinematographers. I studied a lot of photographers. I looked into like, you know, how artists compose things. I was always trying to find something to learn. And I would just constantly tell myself that like, you know, hey man, you don't know anything. You might think you know something, but you don't know anything. And so I made it every day to like learn something. You know what I mean? And I think that's the biggest thing, is just keeping yourself open to learning, even from other people on set, like watching how other people do their job and the risks that they take. And I think that's kind of what makes me like camera ready, is that, you know, even though I find myself very fortunate to work on a TV series and have been given a certain amount of responsibility, I still say to myself, like, I still don't know anything, and I still have a lot to learn.
Right.
And so I do that.
Well, Darryl, thank you. I think those are words to leave us with. And
okay.
It's been such a treat to catch up with you and to talk.
I appreciate it
today. So thank you very much. And this video interview will be on YouTube and will be available. Who knows? But hopefully, I will see you in the not too distant future. And to you and your family, stay safe and healthy during this.
Same here. Time. Yeah, everybody be safe out there, and we're all going to get through this, and we're going to get back to work.
We are. Thanks so much. All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Bye.